Fancy.
Did we make that movie?
That was really
said
good.
Well,
Rooster
yeah, I
Teeth
mean, I've been working
presents.
really hard on it in the back. No one noticed.
It was awesome. Oh, yeah, there we go. Got to always remember to do
Gotta
that.
keep the hourglass.
So we have, we're doing an Ender's Game spoiler cast today. The way that these typically work is we approach a topic, in this case, Ender's Game, and we talk about the story. So in this particular spoiler cast, we're going to talk definitely about the Ender's Game book. We'll expand a little bit into the trilogy and maybe touch on the movie a little bit. So if someone's curious about the universe and about the lore, we're going to talk about it at length. If everything's going to get spoiled for you if you're not familiar with it.
We're going to ruin it. We're going to ruin it all.
Yeah. I would recommend having prior knowledge of the universe unless you don't care about spoilers. So with us today, it's Gus, Ryan, Daniel, first time on a podcast product, and Chris Damaris over there.
I got my last name.
Well, we have multiple Chris's.
You're the only one that required specificity.
Yeah, we don't have any of those.
That
other
was a
Chris's
word.
out
I
here.
never wanted
Almost.
to come to that where there was another one.
Chris D.
That when I was a kid, that was my name, Chris D. Or like in one class because there was two Chris's, and then I became the
inferior
D.
Chris.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I feel like we should start out talking about what we've read and what we know about it. If we've seen the movie. Personally, I've only ever read the first book, Ender's Game, and that's it. And I read it in high school, and I recently re-listened to the audiobook in preparation for the movie.
Can you also say when you read it?
Oh yeah, okay, yeah. I read it. God, I don't know, I was 14, maybe 15, and then I just recently, re-listened to it through Audible before the movie came out.
I read the Ender's Game original book and the follow-up trilogy several years ago. I just reread the Ender's Game this week to prepare for this. I've also read Ender in Exile, which is a newer kind of bridge between Ender's Game and the trilogy. And I read a couple of the Shadow series.
Okay.
I first read Ender's Game, I think when I was 14 or 15, like 7th or 8th grade, right after reading Dune and Foundation, and then went into that. And then I reread it. I found actually in this copy of my book, my LA driving test. So I read it like 5 years ago. So
I've read Ender's Game, the trilogy after that, I guess.
Uh-huh.
And then also the Shadow series. Mm-hmm. And re-listened to the audiobook as well, just recently in preparation for the movie. And I saw the movie.
yeah, and I've seen the movie too.
Okay.
So 2 movies, and we have not seen the movie, so that's the difference there.
Yeah, I didn't want to see the movie before we did this spoiler cast. I felt like since we had people who had already seen the movie, it made sense for me not to see it, that we wouldn't have...
Although I
we could
will
talk
say
about
that
it.
having seen the movie, it made me think about what I like about the book even more.
Well, that's how it usually works with movie adaptions. Is it always comes back to why did they take that out, or why didn't they do this?
Well,
how they do
like I said, I haven't seen the movie, so thinking about the Ender's Game book. Well, first of all, is the movie just about Ender's Game, or does it also encompass Ender's Shadow as well?
Just Ender's Game.
Just Ender's Game.
Yeah.
Okay. So when I think about the movie and I think about things that need to be in the movie and things that could potentially be cut, I'm going to bet that the entire Demosthenes Locke storyline is gone.
Yep.
Okay.
It's gone.
Do you want us
makes
to
sense.
spoil the movie for you?
Well, I mean, this is a spoiler cast.
Okay, fair enough.
In fact, I think we have a quick interview with the director and writer. I don't know if we can pull that up, where he said something that made me suspect that. So if we can call that up, we can watch it, listen to it, and then and talk a little bit about it. Yeah, let's go ahead and cut to that then.
What I wanted more than anything was to be really true to the spirit of the book and the spirit, most importantly, of Ender Wiggin, the character. And a lot of the book, written in 1985, a lot of what's in the book has come to pass. The idea of blogging on the internet was something that was in the book in 1985 and quite extraordinary. But today everybody does that. So those parts of the book I felt we could somewhat safely not include in a movie that of necessity had to be much shorter than the book. But the great iconic moments of the battle room and the simulation battles in deep space, those I felt were absolutely had to be in the movie, not just because they're iconic scenes in the book, but also because they are the most visually exciting.
So in that bit, Gavin Hood, who's the writer and director for the movie, talks about how the book references blogging, and I never thought about it that way. Like the Demosthenes and Locke characters writing for the nets and people absorbing what they read. And I suspected it was going to be cut based on what he said there about how since blogging already exists, you don't need to put it in the movie. But I felt like those characters were critical to sending Ender out to the colony at the end and then having him take off with Valentine. So I'm going to bet, based on the fact they cut the Demosthenes Locke storyline, that they also cut him going out to the colony.
Yeah.
He
leaves to it.
Yeah, well, he gets the little baby mama thing, and takes
The little baby mama thing. All right.
Yeah, you know what I'm talking
the
about.
bug
Yeah, I know what you're talking about. It's a
bugger
spoiler
queen.
case. Just a spoiler
You can
cast. Just say it.
Spoilers, yeah.
At the end, Ender finds the
Baby mama.
baby of the last
He
bug.
finds a queen egg that
Yeah.
can spawn a whole new generation of the Formix.
And
or
he
buggers,
leaves to it.
as it's referred
He
to.
leaves to it, and then that's where the movie ends. Leaves to the colony.
Okay.
So the movie he leaves to it. So
Without Valentine.
where does he
Really?
find the thing then? Because he's supposed to find the larva on the colony world.
Yeah.
It's on the planet that he's staying at whenever he's doing his training.
Yeah.
On
So it's
Eros?
like whenever-
Command
Before
school that he thinks.
Yeah, that's on Eros. Which
Eros,
is,
yeah. So the larva's on Eros.
Yeah.
and the
That
movie
makes
ends-
that's no sense at all. Well, I guess the
Well, Eros is supposed to be a former bugger.
yeah.
world.
I mean, they did
yeah.
build that, but all right, sure.
It's poorly done in the movie.
I mean,
too.
the whole idea is that as Ender is learning to destroy them, they've kind of formed a bond through the Ansible, right?
Right.
And that bridge is how they are trying to learn to communicate with him, and that is why they establish that area based on the fantasy game where he can find the egg. I guess you could argue that since that was a base they established during the first invasion.
Yeah, it was an outpost.
Yeah, it
for,
was
Yeah.
yeah.
Which I think the whole point with the first invasion was they didn't even come to colonize at that point. They just were exploring.
Did you guys buy that in the book though? Like,
What?
did you like the facts, or did it make sense that they were trying to communicate through that? Because that's kind of like the second twist.
Well,
at the end of the book.
The whole idea, and they kind of established that because of that base on Eros, is how they learned a lot of technology to really kind of catch up to where the buggers were, including the whole concept of the Ansible was based on bugger communication technology, or Formic, however you want to refer to them in this. But so yeah, I mean, I can see how maybe since that link was part of their pseudo technology, maybe there was some kind of. I mean, we're talking about
the thing
fiction. They got to
yeah.
have some kind of plot.
The thing I never understood was, so the Formix, I'm just going to call them buggers. Fuck it, I'm
All right,
tired of this
buggers,
double thing.
yeah.
The buggers
Established.
had this form of communication that did not require verbalization. It was kind of like a hive mind, a telepathic link.
Right.
So when the humans discover this and then build their equivalent, the Ansible, in order to make this instant communication, how come the buggers can hear what's going on in the Ansible? And how can they reach Ender like that?
I don't know that it's necessarily the same thing. They just kind of it was weird in the books because, and then they talk about it a little bit more in the trilogy afterwards. What the actual Ansible is based on something called phylotics, which is I think there's a real phenomenon that's kind of at the base of this. But if you take an atom and you split it apart and then alter the spin of the electrons on one part, it affects the spin on the other part.
Yeah.
No matter how far you
Yeah,
separate
done
them.
that.
and
They've
that's how
tested
they
that.
can do the instant communication
Right.
in space. Is they have this? Yeah.
So it's basically, just bit transmissions based on this electron spin changing.
Which I think is supposed to be also the same foundation for the communications in Mass Effect.
Is it?
The quantum relay, because they have the different quantum states that are replicating each other, which is how they're able to send.
I think there may be real science there. I should have looked
There
it up.
is. They've tested it.
Uh-huh.
They've got those.
They are on it.
Yeah, science is working on it out there somewhere.
But, I mean, that's still, I guess, so then...
So they never really.
How-
It
yeah,
wasn't
but-
that they could hear what.
But, I mean, how are they able to
communications.
see Ender's dreams and his subconscious?
They were trying to
Well, that's the
form.
computer program.
And again, they do talk about this later. Well, yeah, the computer program's a separate thing. They do talk about this more later in the trilogy. Basically, the Queen was attempting to kind of interface with Ender's brain like one of the drone buggers. So she was actually reaching out directly to him, not via Ansible technology, but just via her natural, how she communicates with her own drones. So her initial attempt was to take him over and control him like a drone, which is they kind of imply what led to some of the nightmares, that he was having leading up to it, the main battle. And then once she realized that she couldn't do that, that's when she started setting up this backup plan of creating a fallback queen to hide for him.
See, I wonder if that's even necessary. I mean, this is because I saw the movie. But,
Okay.
I don't even know if that's even necessary for...
Necessary, what do you mean?
Thematically, or, he still kills all of them and feels bad for it.
Yeah.
And then finds the queen. Why does there have to be this, whole... him having nightmares and him... I don't know what it leads to, really.
I think ultimately it goes back to early in the book, he doesn't want to be a killer.
Sure.
He doesn't want to do these things that he's being forced to, and I think that's kind of how the nightmares are sold to you.
Yeah.
It's like him struggling with the fact that he hurts and kills all these people.
In the book, I think, in the book it
I
makes
mean, I don't
sense.
even know that they didn't really expound on that idea until the follow-up trilogy. So it may be one of the cases of he already had established this in the first book. And in the first book, it makes perfect sense in relation to what he's going through at the time.
Yeah.
And then it's just kind of a tie-in in the trilogy. It doesn't necessarily mean that that's how it was intended for the beginning. I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, but there's a lot of interesting things. So the thing I was always most concerned about when thinking about an Ender's Game movie is how do you convey the level of violence in children on the screen? There's the early scene in the book. I don't remember the character's name. Ender
Stilton?
kills that Stinson. Yeah.
Stinson.
That one kid who's bullying him.
And at the time in the book, he was 6 years old.
Right.
Yeah.
He's 6 years old and he murders another kid.
Yeah.
Is that in the movie?
The fight is, but not the murdering.
It's he doesn't, and it's told out of order from what they play with when he gets his monitor out, and all that, and they use that to kind of propel the story forward. But the fight's in there, and that's kind of what Graf is has to latch onto. Is I knew it.
But it's one of those things where he kind of kicks him in the ribs a couple times. It's
Yeah.
not like
He mashes
curb
his face
stomps
in.
him,
Yeah.
Yeah.
How old is Ender supposed to be in the movie?
I think
He's
11 or
11.
12.
Yeah.
I think he's 11.
Okay, so in
And
the
he's
book,
that for the entire time, right? Like
They
there's no
compress
passage
it
of
down
time.
a lot.
the time is we got
6
a
months.
month.
Yeah, I mean, in the books, he starts at 6 and by the end is 11 or 12.
Yeah.
So he's in training for 5 years or so.
Yeah.
Yeah, and in the movie they compress it. I want to say it's within 6 months.
Yeah, it's
there's definitely a
really
counter.
fast.
They because it's a movie, they always want to put
Yeah.
a ticking clock. And at one point it's 30 days or else,
Right.
or else everything's destroyed.
So wait, did they actually reveal beforehand that?
This is my big problem with the
Yeah.
movie is that, and maybe it's because I know the books, but I felt they tipped their hand a little too soon, and the twist didn't work for me. I also
so they still tried to maintain the twist that he doesn't know
Yes.
that he's controlling the final battle or
That's
the
kind of
battle.
the
Yeah.
whole point, right?
But
Right.
how did you? Okay, so here's my. I have two questions, but I guess I'll skip to the end. How did you guys always imagine that ending with them, with the simulators, with Rackham and everything? What did you picture in your mind as far as Because I always pictured seeing screens with squadrons, you
Right.
know, and
Okay.
maybe it was because we didn't have when I read it, we didn't have this level of CGI technology where I could where they could do all that. And in the movie, the simulation is you're there.
Right. Well, it seems like when I was younger, I thought of a flat display like you're talking about.
Mm-hmm.
But as I got older, you realize that wouldn't make sense. It would have to be an immersive 3D environment
Okay.
if you're having space battles and coordinating them, because you can't effectively coordinate
And you have to
a
go
three-dimensional
down,
battle
up.
on a two-dimensional
It's
surface.
funny. I mean, if you having just reread that section literally this morning, what he describes, and one thing I will say about these books that is pretty interesting and unique for science fiction is that the technology in them holds up really well because he doesn't explain it.
Yeah.
And everything in the books is you can just accept and it's oh, okay. And none of it's like Star Trek technology where it's oh, the door opens itself, things that we already have now, even though it was written in 1985, I believe. But he basically describes in this what is essentially an RTS. He's able to switch perspectives. He can spin around him
That's-
in space.
It always seemed it's just
Yeah.
another video game.
It's
type
like
thing.
he's playing
Yeah.
Homeworld.
But
honestly.
the thing is also you say you imagine. I imagine as a screen too as a kid, but I couldn't imagine them doing that in a movie. That would it's like hackers. Have you it's like they're describing the internet in the early 90s, and they have this like virtual 3D world that they're flying through hacking, and it's because it's a movie. It's a visual medium, and you have to show things interestingly.
Well, I guess the reason that I think it backfired for me was just because like it felt too real, to the point where I was like, how is this not happening? How is this not? How could Ender, who's really smart, not think?
I know, I get that.
know?
Like, why wouldn't he figure it out? But
Yeah.
I mean, people who watch the movie, and I think it was a surprise to them, or at least they figured it out right before, but it was still like,
Well, I mean, if the technology of it doesn't really shock me. I mean, you just watched a movie where we recreated how real it was, and it wasn't. And that's in modern day.
Sure. Okay.
So in the future, I would imagine video game technology will have caught up to what.
I'll be in the movie.
Yeah, there you go.
How did
Just
you
like
guys
Space Odyssey
imagine?
2001.
Not to skip subjects, maybe, but like, how did you guys imagine the battle room?
Definitely a lot different from the still images I've seen of it. Well, in the movie, it's open, right? Like you.
Well, the thing that was always confusing to me is in the battle room, they talk about two armies facing off, and there are stars in the middle,
Right.
and they never fully explain what they meant by that. So in my head, I thought it was just like a round object with gravity. And here we have some images of it that affected their flight. Since it's all supposed to be space,
Right.
I thought that they could go. It would go near and then pull them around, and they could use it to like accelerate and create orbits.
Oh, that's cool.
I never even thought about that. That's
Yeah, it's like, why do they call it a
interesting
star?
idea.
But as you read the book more, you realize that's not the case. It's
Yeah.
They're
just-
kind of just boxes.
right.
Yeah.
Which,
Well-
again, they never explain how they're tethered there. Or at one point, I think even Ender's talking to Petra, and she says something to the effect of, yeah, there's a lot of questions. Just don't ask them.
Yeah.
Anybody that asks disappears.
I think it was because I was younger. I always imagined it as like a school gym. Like the walls were actually like when you landed, like you couldn't see into space.
Oh,
in
yeah.
the movie, I totally imagined it as a closed area.
So did I.
Oh,
where
you
if you
see into
hit it,
space?
it
Well,
makes,
yeah,
like,
it's like
Yeah, that's in
Windows.
what they just
Windows
showed.
see
It's all open.
Space behind it. To me, it was like, oh, this is like a metallic.
which is cool visually.
Yeah,
But
I see why
like,
they did that
I
too.
imagine like when your foot hit the ground, you hear that squeak when you're in a gym, because it's a gym, And
I didn't think of it as a gym. I thought of
I
it
guess I
as
did.
a like metal spaceship room.
Yeah, I thought
I mean,
of it.
there's a Bowflex
No, I
in the
know.
They didn't have
corner.
roofs.
And,
I was 14. I didn't.
I thought of it as like a dimly lit, dark walled room with handholds and rings all over the place. Because they
Yeah.
talk
Yeah.
about going up to the ceiling or one of the walls and like grabbing on and spinning off. And also they have to have places to tie off later when they start using the
When they
ropes.
start
Yeah.
using the rope, yeah.
But what is it like? I guess it's just what is it like in the movie? It's just
it
like
was like a
here's the
giant
boxes.
glass geodesic dome.
No, I mean, like, I'm sorry. What are the stars like? Are they just like
They're
boxes?
just like metal.
Boxes with lights on them.
When,
They're
when-
there.
when
Oh,
you-
they're
when you
there.
think of
Is that there?
Ender's Game, though,
Yeah,
like,
that's them.
what sticks out as you as the coolest part of that book,
The coolest part
or
of the
just
book?
like the thing that was like when you're reading it, like this is exciting and fun.
For me, and for me, it was Ender in the battle room figuring out everything,
Yeah.
and like him struggling to figure it out.
What do you think?
Yeah, I liked the strain, when they're really pushing him and his army, and they're just like constantly battle after battle, and he's saying, I can't keep coming up with tricks, and then but still like he's like,
Oh,
let's
they
do
changed
this
the
thing, let's
rules
do
on
that
him.
thing, yeah.
Yeah, that wasn't in the movie at all.
Really?
Really?
No, it's
It's it's one of those things. It's like I think there's 2 battles.
there are 3 battle room scenes.
3 battle room
maybe
scenes.
4
Oh, wow.
if you count the introduction.
It's one of those things where it's like, all right, here's the battle room. Here's the gist of it. Oh, you're figuring out gravity stuff, and then it's like, all right, here's your first battle. Ender does well in the battle, and then it's like, it skips. He's like, wow, you've done really well.
Oh my
You've
God.
trained your army, and y'all are at the top score. Let's switch things up. 2 battles at once, or 2 armies at
Yeah.
once, and then they have one battle where it's like they're changing all the rules. What's going on? It's like, well, we've only seen one other.
They
battle,
only
so-
have one battle with Ender leading.
Is there no there's no progression where he starts off essentially in an army where he's not even allowed to fight.
Yeah,
And then-
because in the book he spends basically like 3 or 4 years from the time he gets there.
Yeah,
at
he's a
Salamander
launchy.
Army.
He's a launchy. Then he gets into
Yeah.
Salamander. Where
do
he's
they even
treated
go
like
into
crap.
that? Does he in the movie? Does he go from Salamander to Dragon?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, Salamander's a big part.
He skips
All
straight
those-
from Salamander
The
to
main
Dragon.
beats
Okay.
are there.
So he skips Rat and is it
Yeah,
Rat?
there's no-
And
there's no-
then,
yeah, it's like-
Phoenix.
It's just like introduction of the game,
Mm-hmm.
Ender's first battle where he does really well.
Uh-huh.
He's
Which
all
he
of a sudden in
doesn't
charge of his own
book.
army, but then they never show him
There's
training
a training
or
sequence.
figuring.
There's a training sequence with Petra where he learns to shoot.
Oh yeah.
That's it.
And it's like he has his own army and they're training, and it's like they're doing really well, but we don't actually see it. It's
Yeah.
like a 5 second
Clear montage moment.
It's just
that
like
skips.
it's just Harrison Ford going.
Yeah.
That's it. That's like it's a shot of Harrison Ford just.
And that's another thing that
He
bothered
can say a lot with a nod, though.
Well, yeah.
the two things that bothered me most about the movie, and I hate to go back to the movie, sorry. It's just that it felt clear to me from the beginning that Graf knew what was going to happen. And like in the book, he's a little unsure. He's like, if I'm wrong, we're fucked.
Do they have the conversations between Graf and Anderson, like and show this conflict between them about?
Yes, they changed it a little. They changed the dynamic a little bit. It's more compassion versus just brute force.
Yeah, it's apparently a
She.
female in the...
Yeah.
Okay.
It's funny, looking back at it, I don't know that they ever used a pronoun describing him.
Well,
or
also
major. He was a major. She was a major in the book.
Okay, yeah.
And I think it was always referred to as Major Anderson, and never...
Okay.
there's also not a lot of females, strong leader females in the book, and so there's probably an opportunity where they're like, oh, we need
Yeah.
show.
Well, I mean, in the book, there are a couple of strong female characters. Like you have
No,
Petra.
not.
and-
I mean, leader, like in the government, like
Okay.
Colonels
Teachers.
or majors.
But I think in the books, you really don't encounter many people, like government-wise or like military-wise. It's essentially
That's true.
Anderson and Graf and maybe like one or
And then
two
Mazer.
other people. Oh, and then Mazer Ragnar.
And then they talked briefly to Admiral something that I can't say his name, who's the commander of the command school.
Sure, yeah, he always comes in and is like, "Are you sure you're going to be able to do this?" And Graf's always.
I don't.
like,
Yeah, he was barely in it. Honestly, I
Yeah.
don't know that he was. He's barely in the book, so I imagine in the movies
he's
he's
not.
less.
He's not very much in the. The other thing that bothered me is that it seemed like Ender also knew. Ender, in the book, really struggles to figure things out. Like he's not perfect. Clearly, he's got the strategizing mind that Graf is correct. This is the kid, you know. But he struggles to do it. He has to lose sometimes. He has to figure things out.
No, he never loses.
Does he never lose?
He never loses.
That's one of the. Well, when he becomes a commander, he never loses a battle.
Right. But he still has to has to figure things out.
He
still
does.
has to go into the room and figure out why does gravity
And-
work like
Yeah,
what
he
am I
does
gonna-
extra training sessions with his original launch group to help
Yeah.
kind of facilitate that. He does a lot of work.
Exactly.
to be
In this
good.
movie it seems like he knows exactly what to do when
He's
he
like
walks
Neo
into
in the
room.
Matrix.
I fucking hated it. It was like this kid didn't struggle in this movie, so there's no
Well, jumping back a second too, the thing that kind of bothers me about what you're saying about taking out all the progression of the battle school was kind of a major under point of that was they were destroying the entire training program. Like they were basically dismantling the entire school to get him through this. Like the things that they did to change the battle room would have just completely messed up the training for everybody that came after him or during that period.
yeah, it's like everyone's training is fucked except
Yeah,
for Ender.
it's obviously it's like this guy. Like that was
Yeah.
the weight that was put on him. Was it's like if you don't do it, it's over.
There's going to be no one else.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so what do you think of the movie?
Well, let me ask a question before you answer that. So you mentioned in the movie that there's like a clock or whatever, that they have 6 months to get this done. What is supposedly going to happen when that timer runs out? Because in the book, it's open-ended. It's like, we need to, at first, they're like, we need to prepare for their next
Yeah.
invasion. And then you realize later
think-
that we're actually the ones invading.
Well, I guess it says 30 days and the fleet will arrive at the alien home planet.
Okay, so from the beginning, you know that we're
Yeah.
the ones actually sending a fleet.
That's what I got. Like
From the
you
begin-
see
Wow.
well, it's about 30 or 45 minutes in, you see the countdown and you see a fleet heading to a planet and it's like that's right there.
Well, but you also don't really know exactly what that means. I think they don't really go into detail. It's just one of those things. You see a time,
yeah,
a clicking,
and graph looking worried.
I guess if you have
Yeah,
the
it's-
context for what that
yeah.
means.
I mean, you see like ships coming to a planet.
Yeah.
And it's a timer. It's like you get it. Like something's gonna happen at the end of this timer.
Yeah.
We have to hurry. I don't think
Yeah.
it like telegraphs everything.
Okay, I mean, for me, it
I
did.
guess if you knew from reading
Yeah,
the book, that's
that's
what you
the
would
thing.
think.
I kind
but
of-
maybe if
yeah.
you hadn't read the book,
Then
you
you
would
just-
think maybe they're coming to our
Yeah,
planet.
or it's like you don't even know the context of like what the battle means. You just know that there's gonna be a battle.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. So, God, so there's only. So I'm trying to think of the battles and the progression that Ender went through in battle school and in the training. in order to get to that final moment. So essentially, the only battles he has is the 2-on-1 and maybe his first battle in the movie.
You don't see him battle as a Launchy ever.
Okay.
And
Which
then you
they
see
don't.
him train with Petra. That's the second scene. Then you see him not help. Well, it's Bonzo or Bonzo. I always
Yeah.
pronounce it Bonzo. This is
Yeah.
the name thing where the movie like clarifies it. But Bonzo basically tells him, "Hang back, you can't fight." And they show that battle where he ends up like
Not hanging back. And
not. But in the book,
That was several in. Yeah.
in the book, he doesn't hang back, but he also isn't like actively trying to help. Like he's just floating
Yeah,
there.
I believe in the book he just steps in and then lets.
Yeah, and he just floats there and lets them
yeah.
shoot, and then he's like, "Oh, I could win this game. I could totally shoot those guys and make it a draw."
both happen
That's
actually.
and
In the book,
both
both happen.
happen.
Yeah,
Okay.
he does for the first few battles. He does obey orders and
Mm-hmm.
doesn't do anything. And during that whole time, he's training with Petra and getting better and better. And then by the end of the time he's with that army, he does do that, where he pulls his gun out and stops them from winning. The other team from winning.
well, and I understand why they moved that up. Or it's like they jumped right to him being proactive and winning the battle. But I guess it was disappointing to see that whole period of time where he's training his army and figuring out new tactics and being challenged further and further, just kind of glossed over.
Yeah.
Because to me, reading the book, that's
That's
a
a cool
big deal.
That's a good chunk of the book. That.
And to me, that was what like stood out to me as like the main meat of the book was like this is the coolest
it's
part.
the
of
misfits. Like they say it in the movie. Like Graf says, "I'm giving you all of the rejects. Like I'm giving you the shittiest army possible." And filled with some of his friends like Bean and stuff. But like he gets, he takes from other armies and gives him Dragon Army, right?
Yeah.
And then that's what he has to work with.
Yeah, and he can't
And he
trade.
trains them and makes them awesome.
Right.
And they don't show.
He doesn't
any
know
of
Bean
that.
before that.
Right. There's no clarity in
Does
the
he?
book necessarily.
Oh.
He doesn't know if he's given rejects and the worst soldiers, or if he's given soldiers with weird possible potential.
Yeah.
And he struggles with
sure.
that a lot, trying to figure out if he was given the worst possible or given like
Which he
people
was-
that they see extraordinary promise in.
He was
Yeah.
given
they
a
told
bunch
him
of
that
older
in the-
boys. Yeah,
Yeah.
he was given a bunch of older boys that hadn't really ever had any notoriety, and he was given like a bunch of just graduated to battle school launchies. So he got a
Of
bunch
which
of really
Bean
young
was-
kids.
Bean was one of them,
Bean
right?
was one of those.
Oh,
Yeah,
in the movie they move Bean's with him at the beginning.
that's what I was wondering. So yeah, Bean he had never met Bean until Dragon Army.
Yeah, I think in the book, Ender was 10 when he was taking care of Dragon Army, and I think Bean was 6. So Bean was supposed to be like what
Right.
he was like, just a launchy who had just moved up into battle school.
New Ender.
Right.
And
Which
then all-
actually, in this, talking a little bit away from the movie into the other book series, is essentially what Bean was, according to the Shadow series, was he was a replacement Ender if Ender didn't pan out. He was kind of a genetically modified baby that had grown up on the streets and had this weird thing where he was modified.
Real fast.
Yeah.
A genetically modified baby that grew up on the streets. They're like,
Yeah,
we're going to modify this baby and then just leave him out
like
outside.
the guy that was doing the experiments got caught. It was illegal experimentation on children.
Okay.
Got caught, and somehow Bean ended up just on the
I
streets.
think he escaped.
Yeah,
They
he
allude
kind of
to that.
escaped.
Yeah, he,
They
like,
allude to that
escaped.
in the movie.
Yeah.
He says, "I'm from the streets."
It's like
Which I didn't like the whole Shadow series, honestly. Or at least I only read the first couple of them.
So the Shadow series,
Yeah.
correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah.
Does that focus on Bean?
Entirely on Bean.
Okay.
And then, leading the first one follows all the events of Ender's Game, and then his life after that.
it's kind of like a retelling of Ender's Game. It's like
from Bean's perspective.
from Bean's perspective, and it really changes the story
Hugely.
of Ender's Game.
Yeah.
You realize that Bean was very integral to Ender's success.
It's like they completely changed the hero of Ender's Game
But
from
Bean-
being Ender.
Bean did not come into the book until probably over halfway through.
No, he didn't.
So
Later than that, even potentially.
Yeah, because it's by the time he shows up, Ender has Dragon's
Yep.
army. So does the book start with that moment?
It
No.
starts with him, how he comes to be in battle school.
Yeah, it will start with. I think it tells the story of him escaping his genetic
Yeah.
whatever.
Which is even crazier because it's like he's a toddler.
Yeah,
he's
no,
like
he's like
one or
2.
two and escapes from this.
Yeah.
But like because he's genetically
Yeah.
modified, he has memory of of his
Pretty much everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, the
So-
thing they messed with, I guess to clarify, was they messed with his brain such that when you're a little baby, you form new neural connections very rapidly. So they messed with his genetics such that would continue happening forever for him. Downside being his body also continues to grow forever. So it's that, people actually experience this now where they have that syndrome where they'll just never stop growing and eventually they die because their heart just can't support their body. So he's supposed to be, have a lifespan of no more than 25 years, something like that. But he's supposed to be incredibly smart the whole time.
And that's why he's so small.
Yeah.
Initially, is because he's just growing at a different rate.
Yeah.
But he's just going to keep growing.
Yeah, he'll never stop.
Is anybody here a third?
No.
I am the third, but I'm the first child.
Okay.
So no thirds.
No,
No.
I'm a second.
I feel like they kind of don't talk too much about that in the book. Like, there is a feeling that the world is kind of in a 1984-ish kind of state where there's, large governments, essentially like the hegemony and like Warsaw Pact, who put aside their differences to fight the buggers, but it's still like this unknown, or there's the enemy over there, we'll deal with them at a later time. It's I definitely got like a huge 1984 vibe. They don't even really expand on, I guess couples can only have 2 children, and maybe this one's supposed to have 1, an exception's a second, and a third is supposedly unheard of.
Well, and they talked about, in the book, they talk about how they would raise taxes on you if you
They didn't
had
get
more than
government
2.
health care or education for a third.
Isn't
And
that
then-
like the one-child policy in China currently?
Pretty close.
That if you have a second child, it's possible you just pay a crazy amount of taxes, and that I think they don't get a free education. You have to pay for that
Sounds
as
right,
well.
yeah.
Then in the book, they also, like, Graf specifically says, like, since we allowed you to have the third, we own him, and he is now. Because basically,
signed him
it's
over at
basically
birth.
implied that Graf saw Valentine and Peter and saw their potential and how they fail, and we're like, they need to have a third child because the third one might be the one.
Yeah.
So it was Graf's doing the
Are
whole thing.
Valentine and Peter in the movie at all?
Yes.
Yes.
They're in it, and they're important. I mean, they quickly kind of gloss over Peter being evil by he like beats up Ender. They don't talk about him like dissecting
They play the
animals
bugger
and
game.
stuff.
Yeah.
Like they skip that part. Surprise, surprise.
I was
Wow.
really surprised. Abigail Breslin was horrible.
The what?
And she was the
Was she
Abigail
Valentine?
Breslin. Yeah, she plays Valentine. She's wonderful, but gosh, this terrible performance. It's just I don't know. The performances in this movie are really uneven.
So do you really see them at all once he leaves to battle school?
Well, you see in his dream a little. You see Peter.
And Valentine.
Yeah,
And then you see her again when he goes down to Earth.
So they do have his layaway.
It's I
layover.
reread that. I reread that in the book.
Yeah, I think I saw in a trailer a scene of them on the raft.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and they're there, but the reason that the whole context in the movie is completely different from the book because the whole point of his coming back to Earth is to figure out why he needs to save it.
Right.
Because he doesn't want to be a killer and he doesn't know, and he's kind of lost track of what he's fighting for.
Right.
In the book. And I think that's completely glossed
Yeah,
over.
I mean, and it's also a hard thing to convey with the amount of time they have in visually. Like,
Well, also, I mean, if you think about it, in the book, he's gone for years. They take him when he's 6, and he comes
Yeah.
back
Yeah.
when he's 11. If what you're saying is true in the movie, he's only gone for a couple of months.
Yeah,
It's not like a big deal.
and it's like it's hard to convey to the audience. Yeah, he forgot why Earth is worth saving for.
Yeah,
You
when
know,
he
it's
left
like-
at 11. That's a big difference from leaving when you're 6.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, when you're 6, you only probably remember 3 years of your
Yeah.
life.
Yeah. Well, then they should have done it differently. I don't know.
I mean, see, the thing is,
How do you do it
as
differently, though?
like I see why things were done in the movie, like why they cut certain things, like they cut all the blogging and all that. Like there's
That makes sense.
and I understand that. Like, what I wish they'd shown more of was the struggle. And also just seeing more battle scenes because that was what I was most excited about
Yeah.
seeing.
It's the
in the movie.
coolest
It's the
freaking
coolest
part.
It's constantly in the trailers. I mean, they know
Yeah.
that that's the money shot, and that's why when you watch a trailer, it's all like battle room and
Yeah, and it's
simulation
like
stuff.
I that's what I wanted to see was that development, the figuring out, the training, and like because that was what was the coolest part. And it's
Yeah.
like, oh man, There's like 2 battles. They were cool. They were cool.
They
but
were
like
they
you
could
know.
have been so much cooler. There needed to be 30 more minutes of this movie of just battle room.
I think I've seen some portions of the trailer where they show the final battle with the buggers, where they have like the ships make the cylinder and then punch through the
That was what
all the bugger
kind of
defenses.
bothered me about watching the trailers was it's like if you've read the book, you can identify the final battle is happening right there.
Yeah, but if you haven't read the book, you don't
just
realize
see
the
cool
conflict.
Yeah.
yeah, but
it's
they're making it for both audiences.
Yeah.
Right, but
Why
the
would
people
they
who've read the
reveal
book,
the money shot for the people that knew what they
the
were
people who've
looking
read the
at?
book aren't going to have anything spoiled for them.
No, but I mean,
except
well,
for
they're
on the
being
YouTube
spoiled
comments.
the experience of the movie. It's like, why even bother go see it? It's like, well, there's the climax. I just saw it.
Well, but I mean-
to be fair, you like. I saw the trailer and I was like, I still want to go see it because I want to see the battle room scene.
Yeah, and then they spend so
well, as
much
it turns
time.
out, you did see them in the trailer.
Well, I'm trying to think of like the only other movie that like Lord of the Rings is a good example of like
Get
a
the
book
trailer
that
up
I've
right now.
definitely read
Uh-huh.
and then saw the movie, and the movie totally like for me lived up to it and was just like
Yeah,
it wasn't.
that's true. In
Yeah,
fact,
there was
it was
nothing.
maybe improved.
anything that could have been spoiled was done really well, and like I felt like that was a big surprise.
Yeah, I mean, but it's also like there's 3 movies, you know.
No, they spent the time. Well, it's also
and
3
so they have a
books.
lot more to pull in a trailer to like tell a story.
No, but I mean
tell a
like
trailer.
Boromir's. Oh wait, I can't. Oh, this is not a spoiler
That-
cast
that-
for Lord of
that's,
the
over,
Rings.
that's over a 10-year-old movie. You can
Yeah. But like Boromir's death, like that's a big thing in the book where you're like, holy shit, like Boromir just died. In the movie, it was like, oh, holy shit, Boromir's
Well,
died.
also, they kind of retooled that character. This isn't turning into Lord of the Rings podcast, but in the books, Boromir is a good character who gets corrupted at the very end. In the
Yeah.
movie, he's like, oh, that asshole good, he's dead. You know?
Well,
I feel like they
no,
didn't
I
quite
felt
do
bad
justice
for
to the
him.
character.
Well,
They
I
did
mean,
worse to
he-
Faramir, though. But
Yeah.
they show
man,
that
we're
his
really sidetracked.
his
Okay, sorry.
intentions to like help. You know, like he doesn't.
So, how do you feel the themes of Lord of the Rings contrast with the themes of Ender's Game?
Well,
man versus himself, good versus evil. English teachers, I'm looking at you.
So I already asked about Stinson, I think. Do they show the fight with Bonzo?
Yes,
Is it brutal?
it's. I mean, well, it ends brutally. They basically show him getting his
except
head busted open.
they
I can't remember-
changed the context of it again.
Really? How?
No, well, in the fact that Ender's defending himself.
yeah,
And like
he was in the books.
and
too.
the way but the way he in the book his thought process is I need to end this, and in the movie he's basically saying I don't want to hurt you, and then Bonzo goes after him and he defends himself and doesn't mean to hurt him, like doesn't mean to do what he did.
Okay.
And to me that was
Well, I mean,
that
to
was
some,
a big deal.
To some extent, that's
would've-
essentially
I mean,
mirrors the books. Like,
Yeah.
he still goes into the fight intending to end it proactively forward for all future fights.
Yeah.
But
Well, also, the thing he says in the book, very specifically, is that he needs to end it quickly because Bonzo is bigger and stronger than
Yes.
him. So he needs to, whatever the end is, it needs to happen
Yeah.
immediately. Otherwise, he'll be overpowered.
which
know
in the
what's- you know
book,
what's
it's like
interesting?
2 lines of fight.
in the movie, he's not bigger.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's the other thing.
Yeah, he's like he's shorter than Ender. I mean, he's stronger in that he's older, and
Except that we never see Bonzo be strong. We only see him be stupid.
Yeah.
In the movie.
Yeah, in the book, I believe Bonzo's supposed to be 15, and Ender at that time is like 10.
Right.
Oh, no, wait, it wasn't 15. He might have been 13 or 14,
But bigger.
Yeah,
is, yeah,
he was
older.
about to graduate from battle school.
which is a
whatever.
big difference. It's,
Yeah.
A boy at the beginning of puberty versus,
Yeah.
a prepubescent little boy.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
not exactly a fair fight.
It could have been more
Well, and he
brutal.
brought friends with him, too, which that was kind of the undertone of that battle, as well as, again, Ender manages to separate one and really grind him out.
And that's the other thing. Bonzo sends away his friends in the movie.
Well, he tells them to stay back in the book.
Right.
yeah,
Oh, okay.
I mean
So-
that was I thought that was
We
It's
just
just-
send
there
them
was-
away. They're supposed to be there and menacing.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
I mean, I didn't have any a problem with that fight scene.
it was okay. It could have been more brutal. I wanted it to be.
I understand why it wasn't though. I mean,
In the book, it's literally he headbutts him, then kicks him, and it's over.
Right.
One thing that kind of it's like you miss out a lot of the thought processes and you have to infer
That's
them.
true.
Like you see him rubbing soap on himself, but at no point is there any. I mean, there's no explanation. It's like, oh, he's rubbing soap on himself, so he's slippery.
Right.
But they don't explain that.
You don't get to see his inner monologue.
Yeah,
about that.
and
A
that's hard to
close up
do.
would have done it, man. It's just like simple things from the director, just being like, "Hey, he's putting soap on himself." Like, I don't know.
I'd never go into a
Well,
battle
yeah.
without lathering
Wait,
up.
I mean, yeah, seriously. Can you also imagine, like, let's do a close up on the small child lathering his body?
Yeah.
That'll
Well,
really.
or Ender being like, "How am I gonna get out of this? I'm gonna lather up." Like just
You just wanted that.
You wanted that scene.
what can I-
wanted the-
okay, this is why I like the book.
And I believe also he has another inner monologue during that battle where does he turn all the showers on to create
Yeah.
the
Oh,
steam?
yeah. It shows that.
He does that.
Yeah.
He also realizes that he needs to instigate the battle quickly before the steam causes the soap to wash off of his body and make him no longer slippery.
It's really hard. I mean, how do you transfer that monologue into movie form? It's really hard.
Yeah, and that.
But it's also not good to go the other direction and in a movie say everything that you're feeling, which is what this movie does. Everything's very like in your face, like this is what's happening. This is what's happening, and I don't know. It's hard to find that balance.
All right. So
They
can
should try.
we talk about what we thought about the movie?
Sure.
What did you think?
Well, obviously, I hated it.
All right, I enjoyed the movie. I had problems with it. I mean, the biggest problem I had with it was one, not seeing the struggle. Like in the books, it's this thing where Ender's constantly beaten down, and they just keep changing things to push him and push him and push him constantly to his limits, and we never see any of that.
Yeah.
Do you see even where he? I mean, they don't show very many battles. So, do you even see where he makes like the innovation where he freezes his own legs and uses them as shields?
No.
Well, they put that into the battles. He uses
Okay.
other people. He freezes other people and uses them.
They show some of the innovations. But
Yeah, and they do that, but it's like they don't show him figuring it out. And there's to me that's the movie right there. It's
Well, I
like
feel
the
like
struggle.
Yeah, in
And
the book he figures it out almost by accident. Because I recall, like when he first was just instructed to walk in and he would float, he realized that they froze his legs and that they thought he was out of the game, but he
Right.
realized he could still move and he could still shoot.
yeah,
And that's like the early innovation, which ultimately I think that leads to the innovation that he uses for the final battle, which is you create a shield that's expendable around your true
and you do see that
weapon.
You do see that. You see that battle in the battle room. You see him use that shield, and it's very much like that. But you don't see him.
You do?
Figuring
So that, I mean, because that's essentially the last battle. Well, yeah, you said it's the two army battles.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No, but you don't see him figure it out. He just does it.
Which, I mean, in the books, the moment that he's doing, and it happens both in that battle and in the battle at the end, really his strategy is based on the fact that he just says, fuck it. Like, he just gives up at that point and says, the rules are totally broken. I can't do anything else.
Well,
Yeah.
that's the thing. It's like the final battle where he's destroying the planet. Is he's trying to mess with the system.
Right.
He's in the movie. It's like, this is how I'm going to win. This is my strategy for winning. It's not I'm trying to screw over the teachers.
Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
in
in-
the book, I believe he fires he gets his ships through and fires the doctor device at the planet and is thinking, I bet the computer can't even render what is supposed to happen when you do this because no
And
one's
he-
ever done it.
Not only that, but he was thinking, I bet if I do this, they'll never make me a commander.
Right.
I bet if I do this, they'll never put me in charge. So,
So
it's very
that
different.
would have been so cool if that's what was in the movie. And there's just I really
see, the
dislike
problem is,
Gavin
it's like
Hood
they
and
missed
everything.
the
God,
struggle.
Jesus.
you, Gavin Hood.
No, he has. I'm trying to watch
You.
Zazie right now, but like
You.
Wolverine's a mess, and this movie, like Ender walks into the room knowing exactly what to do in every scene, and that's not a good story.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I'm saying. They missed the struggle. It's because it's like it's like one of those things. Like, oh, he has his team, and they keep doing these training battles over and over and over, and they're so tired, and it's like. It's like a dialogue thing. It's like my commanders are so tired, we can't keep doing this, and they're like, hey, let's do it, Ender.
In the book, before their final battle, the 2-on-1 battle,
Uh-huh.
I think that's the day that Dragon Army has a battle. Esther kills Bonzo, goes to sleep, wets the bed, then wakes up and then has another battle later that evening where it's 2-on-1 and he's just broken and can't do it.
Well, yeah, and this is, it's just one of those things where it's like you're winning everything. We'll change it up.
and it's like I think they did have time to do that. I know I was with a friend at the movie, and he said there's no way that you have time to make this book into one movie. And I think that you can. You just have to compress it.
I
like
think
that.
there's time because like I said, I just listened to the audiobook again. The audiobook for Ender's Game is about 10 hours. So it's not like it's a Lord of the Rings style book or a Game of Thrones book, which is, a giant tome.
It's like a
of
500.
text.
This was 250, but it's like a 500-page book.
Yeah, so it's a 10-hour audiobook. I bet if you read it, at a decent speed, you could be done in like 4 or 5 hours.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, some of what they needed, they didn't do any montage stuff where it shows, time and progression. It's just kind of like
We needed an 80s montage in this movie. That would have been so awesome.
Well, I mean, no, they really did. They needed more like showing time and
Yeah.
and showing their characters getting pushed.
Yeah.
And some of it's in montage, but like
And that's like my favorite part of the book. Is that second? Like, I guess a lot of us find that.
I think
part.
maybe, like one of the things, and I think I discussed this a little bit earlier. One of the things I'm most disappointed is cut is the Demosthenes Locke storyline, and I think the reason maybe that you have to cut that is that is such a long play that you can't film child actors for multiple years. Like you need to make a movie, you got to do your shooting,
yeah,
you got to
exactly.
put it down.
That's true.
You
And
can't
it's-
film him age 5 or 6 years.
And no one conquers the internet in 6 months. So
yeah, it's also one of those
These are
things
genius
too where
children,
it's like again, it's children talking about the internet and typing and writing.
and talking about really
Political things
that
that you have to. This is huge setup. I completely understand why it's like they're Tom Bombadil. It's like I get that.
Oh yeah, I'm glad they cut Tom Bombadil from the series. I'm not glad they cut Demosthenes and
Well,
Locke.
but I
because
understand
that's,
from like a movie perspective, like they have this. You have to kind of pick. It's an important story element, but like
is it though?
I
mean,
think so.
It's
Because
a good story element.
ultimately, it is what propels Valentine to go, and they cut this from the movie too. It's what propels Valentine to go meet Ender and
Yes.
then go together to the colony. Without the Demosthenes Locke,
I think it's a
There's none of that.
very small character tweak to have given Ender his own motivation for wanting to leave the planet. I mean, there's not a huge
No,
jump
that's fine.
for
What-
him just Valentine coming up and leaving without having
no,
Peter
what's-
involved at all.
What's more important is why Valentine convinces him to go back and go to command school.
well.
And in the movie, she just shows up and cries and is like, "You should do it because if you don't, we're all dead." It's like,
Well,
he
here's the
knows
thing.
that already. Here's
the thing is, it makes it all about Ender's story, not anyone else's.
Yeah.
And I mean, that's essentially what the cut is. It's like this is, the story of people on Earth, and his sibling story, and they just cut it. They make it Ender's story.
And also in the book, like Orson Scott Card is started as a playwriter, so that's very much like that storyline is very much like almost the choir, and just like it's this background story. That,
it's
It
like the
doesn't
story
really-
you set up in the foreground in a tiny, dimly lit portion while the set changes in the background.
yes,
and
no,
you set
that's
up
what it
another
is.
bigger
That's
screen.
essentially what it
Actually,
is.
Essentially, it is used thematically like that because that story takes place during one of those essentially like Ender montage where he's in the background experiencing a few years of more training,
Right.
And then they come back to him after explaining that. But I mean, even in the book, there's not really a lot of payoff to that storyline other than Valentine taking Ender
Yeah,
and leaving. I mean,
that's true.
you don't see Peter
Also,
becoming the.
ultimately, it also pays off in the battle, the war that it breaks out between the hegemony and the
That's
Warsaw
true.
Pact, which then also happens on Eros.
Yep.
And they determine like, is Ender going to get killed? Is he, what's going to happen to him now that they don't need him anymore?
I mean,
Because they fight over him. It's like
Yeah.
who everyone wants Ender because he's this ultimate military commander. But I mean, yeah, they skip all the world battle. They focus on, I mean, basically Ender's because to Ender that wasn't his struggle.
yeah.
What's
Yeah.
going on at
I mean,
Earth?
it
The
makes
countries fighting each other. That's not Ender's story.
Yeah.
It
I
makes
mean,
sense in the
it's
movie.
only
He,
his
in
story
fact,
at
he's
the end.
catatonic for that entire period.
Yeah,
honestly,
it's only his struggle at the very end. His struggle is what's going on at the battle school and with himself. The only problem is they kind of skipped his struggle altogether. But I understand why they're like,
Yeah, I'm with
Well,
Chris. I
and
don't
when I
think
was
it's
younger-
necessary for the movie.
Yeah, man,
You
I-
got to
I-
cut something.
I guess, but
I'm
man, I
surprised-
really liked that. Like when I first read the book, I hated that subplot. But then as I got closer to the end, I was like, oh, I really liked that. I wish they'd expanded. A
I
little
didn't
more on
understand it when I was younger.
Yeah.
Like that was the part of the book that I was very much like because
little
I didn't.
drier compared to
Yeah,
the
and I
rest of
didn't,
it.
and I wasn't, into politics when I was 14, and like I didn't understand the nuances of what that story was trying to do.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess for me, I was always just like, well, I don't know what to do with this, So I just, I just let it go.
it.
And
I
liked Ender better.
It doesn't shock me that got cut. What does surprise me is that the fantasy game actually made it in.
No, yeah,
how
Oh, the
prevalent
fantasy
it
game's
was.
in there?
Yeah, I was surprised by that too. But then you think about it in the big picture, it's like, oh, it's the only way that he knows about the baby mama egg.
Larva. But wait, so
That's
is
true.
the fantasy world?
Well, is it? Because they cut out how he discovers it.
The fantasy world? Did they recreate that on Eros?
Yes, it takes place on the world that he's in command school or
Wait,
command.
so he finds the recreation fantasy world on Eros?
Wait,
Because that would
Because
be
that's
extremely
Eros is where
derailing.
command school is.
Yes.
So then that's where the buggers had built. That doesn't make any sense
The
at
dead
all.
giant in the playground and the castle.
No,
at
they
the
don't
end of
have
the
all
world.
that, but he's like, I've been here before. He recognizes the terrain, and it's like,
That makes no
That
sense
makes
at all.
no sense timeline-wise because all of that should have been built at the last minute right before the buggers were killed.
Yeah.
And they were not on Eros anymore. Like, they could not have built that.
Unless they were
Because-
seeing through time.
Yeah, because the humans would have been on Eros at the time
Yeah.
that he was playing the fantasy game in Battle School.
yes.
So, yeah,
So
timeline-wise...
when did they
that-
construct it?
They did it secretly.
Secret
on-
Right
mother
across
invasions?
the way.
Well,
And
we're
it's
already
really funny.
fucked. Why do we
It's
even
really
bother?
funny when he walks out of command school. It's literally maybe like 2 or 3 football fields away. Like
well, yeah,
that's
it
where
is
the
kinda
bug
ridiculous.
is.
He's like, I gotta go. He just kind of is like, he finishes the main battle and he's like, I'm gonna go walk, and then he's just walking out to a planet, you know. And,
Wait, he just walks out onto the
so
surface.
bad.
He's just strolling across
yeah,
an airless vacuum.
and then he's like, oh, I'll go in here, and
I still don't think they even needed it. I
Wow.
don't
they,
think
yeah,
they
I mean,
needed
they
it.
definitely like
well,
missed something on
that's a
that.
setup for a sequel, right? I mean,
Yeah.
Well, see, but that's not a good reason to put it in. But I mean, I know why it's in there.
no, I mean,
just-
it's very important, I think, to the character that exists because that's sort of his redemption.
Yeah,
That's why he's
sure.
allowed.
I mean, that's why I think they had the game is because it's the ending redemption, which is
But why not? Why not just have him kill the planet and feel really bad, and then go for a walk and stumble across this egg and realize, oh, that's what this is. I can make up for what I did instead of building this whole. I don't know.
I think
That's
that
really
it was
weak.
really
they
difficult.
They do that. I think in order to try to make him more like, what's the word? Empathetic towards
Yeah.
the buggers. Like, you know, he realizes that, or in the book anyway, he realizes that they don't hate him. The queen realizes he doesn't know what he's doing.
And
That
the oth-
he thinks it's just a game. He thinks it's just a simulation. So this is like her last ditch. Like, he's okay. He will help us, you know, if we just leave him this
we
larva.
reach out to him.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's why they construct this whole thing, which I still don't understand based on what you've said, how they could possibly have done that.
No,
in the
yeah, that
movie.
makes no sense at all.
It's difficult. That's
That's
difficult
super
to
Yeah, I
do
mean-
in the
broken.
movie.
yeah, it's hard to explain all that.
Glaring plot hole.
Yeah,
Yeah, because I mean, this is like in the book, it's like the IF command planet. You know, the pilot who flies them there then has to stay there the rest of his life. Like, once you are there, once you know where it is, you are not allowed to leave.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that.
And
Yeah,
it's also
like-
so far away that time has passed differently on Earth.
Right.
So that like that's why like Valentine would be older when he goes
Wait,
to
what?
the because of
Yeah, they
time
travel for
dilation.
so long that they don't age as quickly. It's the same reason.
Well, yeah,
that
they have relativistic travel, but not to go to Eros.
it still
Is
took
it?
them several months. It was
It's only in this. It's in the solar system. If you were traveling at
in the
relativistic
solar-
speeds,
well
yeah, it's orbiting Jupiter. Right?
no well in the
it took
book
them. It
in
took
the
them months.
in
to
the
reach
It took
book-
them 3 months to get there.
Okay.
in
So
the
I
book,
assume they
it
weren't
says
traveling
it.
relativistically.
I
Well,
just
no,
read
you
that.
could still travel relativistically and take a while to get there in solar system.
So I mean, that's one thing that we haven't talked about. That I guess when we only have like 7 minutes left, so we
Okay.
should talk about is the fact that Mazer Rackham is still alive.
yeah,
And
he's the one that goes for
it
the
wasn't
real
even
time travel.
Surprise, like how could you still be alive because of how much time has passed? They didn't really explain that. It's just, oh, I thought you were.
And they also in the book it's been a while. Do they explain how he survived?
Oh, and here we got some pictures of him. Real fast before we get to that. So he's supposed to be Maori General. He's the one
Yep.
who led the humans during the first
Second invasion.
The second
He was
invasion.
actually he was like the reserve backup guy that just happened to be the one that spotted essentially the queen.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And
he
went
re-
after her, and that was it. Like that was the end of the
Yeah,
battle.
he realized that based on the ship movement of the buggers, that they were all moving around one ship, and that one must be a hive mind, that that's the one controlling it.
Yeah, I think they did a bad job of showing that. Beforehand they explain it after the fact, But then it's one of those things where like, well, how did you know? It's like the footage they show is like, oh, he just went after the mothership. Duh.
Yeah.
Oh, is it like a big mothership?
It's just
Yeah.
a big
It's like the
mothership.
one big
That's
one?
it.
So it's like, oh,
I
he
killed the
went
big
after
one.
the mothership.
No, it's
of
Independence
course.
Day. It's like, what's the big one up
I
there?
mean, they
in-
specifically say in the book that like it's very difficult to see, and that they move it around and hide it and make it look like any
Yeah,
other
they
ship.
kind of they don't really. It's just like they kind of explain it later on, but then it's like the footage they show. It's like, oh, that's the mothership. Just
Yeah, no. Like when I first saw it, I think just go for that. Like,
yeah,
that's-
it's like the big one.
you don't
The
have
big
to be a
one.
genius.
And
to do
he
that.
actually do the Independence Day where it's just like go up the.
Yep.
Like
Really?
I'm gonna
Like
kill
up the
myself. And I was like, wait, why are they doing Independence Day?
Because it's a good movie.
And I believe in the book, the first command school battle where he thinks he's fighting Mazer Ragnar. Oh, is it Mazer Rackham? Rackham. Yeah. He thinks he's fighting Mazer Rackham, but he's actually fighting the buggers. Like they set up that fake trap where they have all of the ships around one ship in the middle. And Ender says, "I know that they're trying to make me think that that's the mothership, but it's obviously not." And he uses the Doctor device for the first time, and since they're all packed so tightly, it kills almost all of them.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's weird that they would make an obvious mothership.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it's like, well, it's like, how did you know? And it's like, well, it's the big one. It's like,
I hit it by accident. It's so big I could not hit it. So it's interesting to me that he's supposed to be a Maori character, and they cast Ben Kingsley and then give him facial tattoos.
Yeah.
It's like,
no, that's all it takes to be Maori, right?
yeah, it's weird. It's
Tattoos.
like either cast a Maori actor or cast Ben Kingsley and don't put the facial
Nah,
tattoos on him.
no. I'm gonna go become Maori, later this week. I'll just go get the
Or
tattoos done.
Maori.
Maori. I can't say it.
I think it's Maori. I get in trouble all
All
the
right.
time.
It's one of those things I read but never heard.
So you said they don't explain really how he was able to live so long.
Well, that's the
it's-
easiest
it's
part of the
more-
whole thing.
Oh, no,
yeah,
how
I
he
mean, well, it's just one of those
survived,
things.
too.
Time wise, it's like time is so compressed
Yeah.
that I mean, and I don't think that's necessarily important that he.
Well, I guess if
They
if
don't-
they've really compressed the whole timeline, you could argue that maybe 50 years hasn't. I mean, in the books, Mazer Rackham's battle is 50 years before.
Yeah.
I think it was 70.
Well, here's the thing:
could
is
This
be.
one, I think it was. They say 25.
it's still a surprise that
25
he's
now,
still
okay.
alive because the battle they show his ship flying into the mothership. So you assume, oh, it was a suicide.
Well, everybody
okay.
thinks that.
Yeah.
Everybody thinks that. Like Ender, like the whole world thinks that. He
Well, that's what I'm
killed
saying.
himself. Yeah.
It's still a surprise that he's alive.
Well, that's a weird
For a
twist
different
to it.
reason.
But yeah,
All right.
Is there a lot of the training between Mazer Rackham and Ender? Because that's like towards the end, that's another very crucial, critical part of the book.
That's another thing where they needed like a montage because they have like they show one battle, right, and then
Really, it should just been one month.
they show
A
one
montage of
The
montages.
whole
Well, they
thing
show
was a
one battle,
montage.
They show an easy battle.
and then it's
That's
like
real.
and then it's like then they show him. No, they show one battle where he wins, one battle where he loses.
He loses?
Yeah,
Well, he loses forces.
Okay.
Yeah, and
and
doesn't
then
lose the
it's
battle.
like my team. They're so tired. We've been training so much, and then it's the final battle.
Do his commanders in the final simulations of Command School, is it all of his old friends again?
yes.
Yeah.
They come back?
Yeah.
Okay. I wasn't sure if they cut that too.
They put them all in the same room though.
Oh, okay.
Oh, so he can
Because-
see him.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the book, he very specifically
a
says he
headset.
doesn't know if they're on the same planet or if they're somewhere else.
Yeah, because they isolate them. They don't really show the isolation or like the pressure they put on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yeah, and I think it's probably for good reason in the movie. I think
Well,
that worked. That
visual-
change works.
yeah.
I think.
Yeah, I mean, seeing all in a room and like him yelling at them. And,
Yeah, that made sense. It was a good
Okay.
change.
Interesting.
yeah.
Yeah, because I think you don't realize that they're together until after the fighting between the hegemony and the Warsaw Pact ends, and the Warsaw Pact agrees to the treaty that his brother brokered again, not in the movie, and then like they rush in and they make sure he's okay. I guess there's none of that fighting. You said he walks out after the battle, and that's when
Yeah,
he sees
it's
the
like
egg and
he's
it's
tired.
over.
Let him rest.
He
and then he's like,
collapses,
and
then he
he
wakes
sleeps,
up.
and then he's like,
Oh, he has a
I'm
dream.
gonna go for a stroll.
He has a dream. Yeah, and then he goes for. Well, he has a dream that makes him like realize.
Yeah,
Nothing
that-
gets
that-
you over crushing depression like a stroll.
Well, it's one of the he has a dream.
It's
He's
like a moon stroll,
I
like
know
low
what
gravity.
they've been telling me. I have to go get the baby egg mama, and then so he's like he runs out, grabs the oxygen tank, and just kind of like it's like walks, and then it's like there it is.
There it is. I am redeemed. Everything.
And then he leaves.
And then he leaves.
Yeah, and then it's just kind of like they let me take a ship to colonize. I mean, they have to kind of brush over the whole.
Wait,
thing,
so
but-
what do you mean they let him take a ship to colonize?
Well, because they made him an admiral. So
Like, they made me an
and
admiral.
now he can do whatever he wants.
so
now.
he took like a ship of humans to go
Well,
colonize.
Well,
That's
that was
unclear.
at the end. They're sending out all the colony ships to go repopulate all the.
I just want to make
other
sure
worlds.
they didn't give him permission to colonize a booger planet, right? They know they don't know that he has the egg.
about
Okay.
Well, no, that's.
They don't
I
say
mean, that's
it's
what
not
they're
clear.
doing, though.
They don't say explicitly. They said they made me an admiral,
okay,
admiral of
gotcha.
the army, and I'm taking a ship to go and explore and look for a place to put the bugger
yeah,
baby mole.
that's it.
All right.
Wait, I missed that. They,
And then he wakes up in
That's
hyperspace. for
it
some
sounds
reason.
like this is like a voiceover
Yeah,
kind of thing
okay.
where he's just
Oh, the-
explaining his
Okay,
intent.
okay.
He's not actually saying to the command, "Hey, I found an egg."
found this egg. I'm gonna go see
Yeah,
if
yeah.
you catch
They,
it.
they don't show any of that. It's
Do
just
they-
like really quick. It's just
I mean-
like he finds the egg, decides that I want to do it, and then it's just like they gave me a ship.
So I
I'm
assume
an admiral.
they don't address the speaker for the dead element at all.
no,
like
no,
he
they
doesn't
don't.
write the book.
There's none of that.
no.
Again, there's no Locke and Demosthenes.
Yeah, so
Well,
there's
it's not necessary though. I mean, the speaker for the dead book is what sets up the change in the universe such that he can reintroduce the buggers.
Is it? It's Demosthenes who introduces the Speaker of the Dead book, though, right?
No, Ender writes it.
He writes-
She
yeah.
puts it at the end of one of her histories,
Right.
but it's been released before that and become so popularized that it's
Right,
essentially
what I'm saying
a
is,
religion.
I know Ender writes it, but it's Demosthenes who releases it.
No, he
through the-
publishes it first.
Okay.
And then she includes it at the end of one of her histories.
Okay.
And then he does one about Peter. So he does two
Right.
books, and those two become kind of like a religion.
All right. Well, we're at time. Sadly, we've
So
reached
much
our
to
hour.
say.
There's a lot to talk about. I'm excited, despite your misgivings about it. I definitely want to see the movie.
You might enjoy it.
it's fun. It's visually really cool. I just wish
Visually, it's good.
Well, go see it for yourself. Hopefully, you didn't get too much spoiled for you, or hopefully, if you've seen it already, you got our insight into it. So, thanks. We'll hopefully be back soon with another spoiler cast. Bye.
Are you the one?